Okay, so in a previous lesson, you might have heard me say that using Windows 10 is like using a vehicle, like a car. Okay, you get behind the wheel of that car and you learn how to operate it and move it and maneuver it and all that. But you don't necessarily, an end user wouldn't necessarily understand the under the hood part of that, right? So we talked about that. We were talking about the registry sort of under the hood. I want to introduce you to something else now that's sort of the under the hood of Windows that makes Windows actually function. It's these things called services. In Windows, we call them services. In the Unix, Linux world, Macintosh world, they call them daemons, sometimes pronounced demons. But basically, there are all these background processes, these background functions that are making things work in Windows. Okay, there's different services that are going to allow me to do things as I use my applications and interact with things. These services are running in the background of Windows, and they interact between the end user as well as my drivers on my machine and all that. For example, when I go to print something, I have a service called the Print Spooler service that handles the entire print process from start to finish. It accepts the document, it processes it, accesses the driver, allows that printer to interact with the operating system, and away we go. If you were to stop the Print Spooler service, you wouldn't be able to print anything. Okay, let's take a look at our services. Now, there's various ways you can get into services in Windows 10. I'm just going to go down to the search bar. I'm just going to type the word services into the search bar, and you'll see this little cog symbol here. I'm going to open that up. Okay, and then it's going to show me all of my different services. Okay, so here they are. And if I just maximize that a little bit, if I click on a service, you can see a description of each one. I encourage you to learn what all the different services are at some point, or at least the critical ones in Windows. This will help you in troubleshooting malware as well, because lots of viruses and things like that, they love to make themselves a service. Okay, but that way they can start every time the computer starts. Notice, though, that you have these different services, and some of them are running and some of them are not. So that shows you right there, you don't have to have every single service running in Windows. Okay, here's the Print Spooler service that I was just talking about. Let me zoom in on that for you. Okay, there's the Print Spooler service. Notice that it's running. Okay, let's double click on that service, and when you double click on it, you get a box that looks like this, and here's your description, and I want to show you that there are things called startup types. Startup types decide whether or not the service is going to start up and sort of when the service is going to start up. So when your computer boots up, if you select automatic, your service is going to automatically start when the computer boots. Okay, automatic gets the highest priority of services that get started. You've also got automatic delayed start. Now that one is actually going to delay. It'll wait for all the automatic services to start, and then the delayed start will go next. So these are lower priority services. You can also do manual. Manual will make it where the service does not start when your computer boots, but you can manually start the service if you need to. Another thing that can happen is other services can start this service if you need to. If they need to. So if there is a service that depends on this service, it can start it. If you look up here, there's a tab called Dependencies. I can click on that, and I can see that this service depends on certain other services, and there are services that depend on this service. Notice this. It says, this service depends on the following system components. So these things have to be running, okay, for this service to start. If these are not running, this service can't start. But if you read this, it says the following system components depend on this service. So the fax service, for example. So in other words, if the fax service tries to start and the Print Spooler service can't be started, then it's not going to be able to start the fax service. Okay, now the other thing I'll note about that is if you set this to manually, okay, manual, and the fax service was to try to start, the fax service can trigger this service to start if it's set to manual. I can also go to disabled. If I disable the service, then at that point, nothing can start it. You have to take a service out of disabled state before it can be started. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing I want to show you is up here on the Logon tab. It's important that you understand the difference here with Logon. This is something you can be tested on for sure, and want to make sure you're clear on it. So a service, when it runs, it's got to run under the authority of an account. By default, the account that it's going to use is called the system account. The local system account is, there's a couple of things of note there. Number one, the local system account has admin rights over your computer because it's the operating system. But the second thing of note, local system account cannot cross the network. So this computer, this service would not be allowed to interact with other computers across your network. Okay. Now you could also allow this service to interact with your desktop. That'll allow it to make changes to your desktop environment if you want to allow that. But if it's not a service that's supposed to be interacting with the end user's desktop environment, then you wouldn't have to select that. Okay, nothing important really there I will worry about, but you got to understand the difference between this option and this option here. Okay, so now if I choose this account, I can actually create a user account and point to that user account right now on my computer. Okay, so let's pretend that I pointed to this admin account right here. I could do that. And at that point, this admin account would be the account that this service uses when it tries to perform whatever actions it's going to perform. Now, there's some good news and bad news on that, okay, depending upon the way you look at it. By using this account, the service is restricted to the permissions that this account has. Now, in this case, it's an admin account, so it doesn't have a lot of restrictions, okay? But you could, if you wanted to restrict the service, the best way to do that is to create a user account, restrict the user account with permissions, and we talked about permissions before, okay? Restrict the user account, and then at that point, assign the service to that user account. Now, the other benefit of having this account is that the account can cross the network. Unless you deny it access to cross the network, it can cross the network. So if you had a service that needs to be able to interact with other computers on the network, you would want to make sure you had this account selected, some kind of a network account that it could use to cross the network. If you did not want this computer to, or this service to be able to interact with the other computers across the network, it's probably going to be better to go with local system account. Okay, so those are your options on that. Keep in mind that a lot of worms and things like that get infect on people's computers, they generally like to make themselves a network service so that they can cross the network and infect other computers. So you want to watch out for any kind of like rogue user accounts or something that get created. Okay, you've also got a recovery tab. This is going to be used if the service is having problems starting. It'll decide what to do if there's a failure. It'll keep trying and how many times you want it to keep trying and how you want it to log the failure and all that good stuff. Okay, all right. Now we've also learned that we can start and stop services. We've talked about how we can do this through PowerShell as well. Okay, I can see my services. I can type get-service and see my services. If I wanted to stop a service, I can say stop-service, okay, and then specify the name. If I want to start a service, I can do start-service, okay. And also, sort of the old way to do it, if you were just in command prompt, you can actually type net stop, like I could do net stop spooler, and that would stop the spooler service. I could do net start, and that would start the spooler service. So that's sort of the old way to do it that didn't require PowerShell. So those are some of the ways that you can start and stop services, okay? And hopefully that gives you a good foundation for what services are and how to configure them.